It started with a smirk. Not from Jasmine Crockett, but from Megyn Kelly, sitting under bright studio lights, her pen twirling between two fingers, her posture calm, calculating. That smirk said it all. I've got this. She'd faced governors, presidents, celebrities. What could one congresswoman possibly throw her way? She was about to find out. The tension in the studio was thick before the first question even dropped. You could feel the unspoken challenge floating in the air, two powerful women, two very different perspectives, and one live debate being streamed across the country. This wasn't going to be a soft interview. Everyone knew it. The camera zoomed in on Megyn as she introduced her guest. Tonight, we welcome Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett from Texas, a vocal figure of the progressive left who's made headlines for her controversial takes on policing, power, and policy. That single sentence was crafted like a trap, polite on the outside, but loaded with accusation. Megyn didn't say leader, she said vocal figure. She didn't say vision, she said controversial. She set the tone, hoping Jasmine would play defense. But Jasmine Crockett didn't blink. She offered a sharp smile and a nod. Glad to be here. Ready to clear up the controversial parts. That response wasn't just shade, it was a warning. This wasn't going to be the usual political dance. Crockett had come to the table with gloves off and her sleeves rolled up. She knew Megyn's game, and she wasn't about to play by her rules. The audience, both in studio and online, immediately felt the spark. The comments started flooding in on the live stream. This is gonna be good. Crockett came to fight. Megyn better be ready. Within the first minute, it was clear this wasn't just another segment. This was a collision course. The smirk on Megyn's face faltered just slightly. It was subtle, but anyone paying attention saw it. Crockett had landed her first silent punch without even touching a policy point. Megyn moved quickly, trying to regain control. You've made some bold statements about law enforcement, Congresswoman, she said, flipping through her notes. Some might say, reckless. That was the opening volley. Megyn expected Jasmine to stammer, maybe pivot to a softer answer. Instead, Crockett leaned forward, her voice calm but packed with power. Reckless as ignoring people dying in the streets. Reckless as funding departments more than we fund education, then pretending we don't know why crime exists. What I said wasn't reckless. It was real. Boom. No fluff. No hesitation. Just raw truth, delivered with clarity. The camera panned to Megyn. She was clearly taken aback, not just by the content, but by the delivery. This wasn't a politician dodging heat. This was a woman walking straight into the fire and turning up the temperature. The studio crowd murmured. People in the control room exchanged glances. Even the floor crew, normally stone-faced professionals, were visibly impressed. Megyn tried to deflect. But surely you don't believe all police are. Did I say that? Jasmine interrupted, not raising her voice but slicing through the question like a blade. You're putting words in my mouth, which is a thing you tend to do. What I do believe is that if police want the public's trust, they have to earn it. No badge should come with immunity. The audience gasped. That was the moment everyone knew, Megyn had lost the upper hand. What had started as a typical interview had flipped completely. The control that Kelly usually maintained so easily was slipping, and Jasmine wasn't just defending herself, she was going on offense with precision. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't insult. But she owned every second she was speaking, making sure her words were backed by experience, statistics, and personal conviction. That's what made it even more powerful. Viewers online couldn't get enough. Clips from the live stream were already being clipped and posted across TikTok and Twitter. Influencers began reacting live, praising Jasmine for what some called one of the most composed takedowns in a mainstream debate ever. And all of this, from just the first few minutes. Megyn, still trying to keep the flow going, leaned back in her seat, that original smirk now fully gone. Let's move on to another topic, she said, almost too quickly. But the damage was already done. Because Jasmine Crockett hadn't just shown up for a soundbite. She had shown up with purpose, power, and proof. She wasn't the angry black woman the media loved to stereotype. She was articulate, passionate, and devastatingly factual. The moment she said let's clear up the controversial parts, the power shifted, and it never shifted back. That smirk at the beginning? By now, it felt like a distant memory, washed away in the rising tide of Crockett's truth. And everyone watching, whether they supported her or not, had the same thought in their mind. Oh, she's not here to play. This wasn't just a clash of opinions, it was a collision of worlds. On one side, Megyn Kelly. A seasoned media personality. Polished. Sharp. With a long career built on controlling conversations, asking tough questions, and leading the charge on polarizing issues. She had sat across presidents, sparred with political giants, and never backed down from controversy. Her style was simple: be the smartest person in the room and challenge her guests until they slipped up. On the other side, Jasmine Crockett. A rising star in the Democratic Party. A former civil rights attorney. Fierce. Unapologetic. Representing a new wave of progressive voices not interested in playing it safe. She didn't come to be tamed or tolerated, she came to talk truth, no matter who sat across from her. The program was framed as a town hall special on political responsibility and law enforcement reform. The topic: policing, politics, and the public trust. But let's be honest, that was just the packaging. Everyone knew the real draw was the potential drama. Crockett versus Kelly. Old school media versus new generation activism. In the green room, Jasmine Crockett reportedly sat calmly with her team, barely touching her water, reviewing her notes, not to memorize talking points, but to arm herself with facts. This wasn't her first hostel room, and it wouldn't be her last. But she knew Megyn was different. This was personal, televised, and strategic. Meanwhile, producers backstage whispered about fireworks. They'd seen the numbers when Crockett debated other conservatives. Her segments went viral, especially when she refused to be silenced or spun. Megyn had done her homework, but so had Jasmine. As the countdown to the live show began, the studio lights dimmed slightly and the host walked onto the stage with the confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Megyn Kelly opened the segment, voice crisp, posture perfect. We've heard the outrage, we've seen the protests, but what does accountability really look like in politics today? Our next guest thinks she has the answer. The camera cut to Jasmine Crockett, seated comfortably, wearing a calm expression but with eyes that said, "Try me." Kelly continued, subtly framing Crockett before she even had a chance to speak. She's become one of the loudest voices on police reform, sparking both praise and controversy. Please welcome Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Notice the word again, loudest. Not strongest. Not most influential. It was coded language, and Jasmine picked it up immediately. She smiled, almost laughing. Thanks for having me. But let me just say, I'm not here to be loud. I'm here to be clear. Boom. First correction. First tone shift. Megyn nodded, maintaining her cool. Fair enough, she replied. But already, the balance of power was slipping. From there, the opening conversation was civil, but tense. Megyn tried to steer it calmly, asking questions that felt loaded but not overtly hostile. So, Congresswoman, you've called for a complete reimagining of public safety. What exactly does that mean? Because to a lot of Americans, it sounds like chaos. That's when Crockett showed why she's becoming one of the most compelling voices in U.S. politics. It sounds like chaos because that's how it's been framed, she replied, measured but firm. But let me explain. When people say reimagine public safety, they're not saying abandon police, they're saying invest in systems that stop crime before it starts. Education. Mental health. Housing. You know, things that actually keep people safe. No defensiveness. Just facts. Delivered with ease. Megyn, sensing Crockett wouldn't take the bait, tried another tactic. But critics argue that you're weakening the institutions meant to protect us. Aren't you afraid of the unintended consequences? And again, Jasmine calmly swatted it down. What I'm afraid of is burying more children, more black men, more innocent lives, because we refuse to change a system we know is broken. That line landed hard. The crowd, previously quiet, murmured in agreement. Even some of Megyn's most loyal viewers watching online began commenting. She's making sense, and she's calm. Megyn's trying, but Crockett's too sharp. Why can't all politicians be this direct? The divide between the two women was now clear, not just ideologically, but generationally, culturally, and emotionally. This wasn't left versus right. It was truth-teller versus spin-master. Jasmine wasn't there to yell. She wasn't there to score points. She was there to correct the record, and everyone watching felt it. The tension escalated subtly. Megyn's tone got tighter. She tried to interrupt more. Jasmine, meanwhile, never raised her voice, never leaned back. She kept her eyes forward, her hands still, and her message bulletproof. Then came the line that truly set the tone for what was to come. Megyn asked, "Do you ever worry that your approach alienates more than it informs?" Jasmine replied, not missing a beat. "If truth alienates people, that says more about their comfort with lies than my delivery." Silence. Powerful silence. Even Megyn paused. The setup was complete. Two worlds had collided, and the audience, whether in the studio or online, knew that the real heat hadn't even begun yet. This was no longer a debate. It was a public reckoning. As the interview moved into its third segment, the tension wasn't just simmering, it was boiling. The polite smiles were gone. The performance gloves were off. And Megyn Kelly, for all her media experience and stage control, had stumbled into something she couldn't fully manage. Jasmine Crockett in full command of her message and her power. Megyn tried to recover her edge by doing what she's done countless times, pivoting to a controversial talking point meant to discredit. She glanced at her notes, looked up, and asked the question she thought would tip the scale in her favor. "Congresswoman, let's be real. You've openly supported movements that want to defund the police. In cities where that's happened, we've seen crime rise. Isn't that reckless? Don't those policies hurt the very communities you claim to protect?" It was the kind of question that's worked before, loaded, aggressive, dressed in logic, but designed to push the subject into defensive mode. But Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. She didn't stammer. She didn't dance around it. Instead, she hit back, with truth. "I'm so tired of this lazy narrative," she began, her voice low and controlled. "Let's talk about what's really reckless, spending billions on militarizing police departments, while our schools crumble. Reckless is funding departments that brutalize, then asking communities to be silent about their trauma." Megyn blinked. She tried to jump in with a follow-up, but Jasmine held the floor. "I come from a family of law enforcement. I know what good officers look like. But don't twist my words. I'm not against policing, I'm against unchecked power." That sentence landed like thunder. The studio audience, mostly quiet up to this point, stirred. A few gasps. A couple audible uhs, and somewhere in the back row, someone clapped once, loudly, before stopping themselves. Even they knew they were watching something real. Megyn tried to salvage the moment. "But with all due respect, Representative, those are just words. We're talking about public safety. And public safety means everyone gets to go home at night," Jasmine interrupted, leaning in slightly, her tone sharper now. "That includes black boys walking home from school. That includes protesters not being tear-gassed. That includes women not being shot in their beds. You want to talk about safety? Let's talk about justice first." That was it. Megyn fell silent for a beat, too long. The pause said more than her next question could. She wasn't expecting this level of precision. Not here. Not now. Then she pivoted again, trying to change the frame. "You've been critical of media coverage in the past. Would you say I'm part of the problem?" That was the moment Jasmine Crockett stopped being just a guest, and became a voice that echoed through the screen. Honestly, she said, coolly. Yes. You are. Because when you push cherry-picked crime stats and paint protesters as rioters, you're not informing. You're inciting. You shape narratives that make people fear their neighbors instead of holding systems accountable. It was bold. Direct. Not angry, but undeniably intense. Megyn's face tightened. For a second, the old composure cracked. She sat up straighter, interrupted. So, you're blaming the media for crime now? But Jasmine didn't blink. I'm blaming the media for misinformation. For picking ratings over truth. And for platforms like yours choosing sensationalism over solutions. Boom. Social media was already exploding. Live commenters wrote things like, "Someone finally said it. Jasmine is cooking her alive." Megyn looked shook. Crockett wasn't just winning the argument, she was controlling the pace, the tone, the message. And she did it with facts, lived experience, and the kind of calm that made every jab from Megyn look more desperate than dangerous. Kelly tried to recover. She reached for an old interview clip, a moment taken out of context from one of Crockett's campaign stops where she had raised her voice during a heated community forum. "You called police an occupying force in one speech. What do you say to Americans who find that divisive?" Jasmine didn't skip a beat. "I say they need to listen to the full sentence," she replied. "Because what I actually said was, when police treat communities like an occupying force, that's when trust is lost. And that's the truth. People are tired of being policed, they want to be protected." The audience snapped to attention. It was clear, Jasmine had done her homework. She knew every twist the media could throw at her, and she had the receipts. Megyn, clearly frustrated, moved to her final question in the segment. "So where do we go from here? If you think the system is so broken, what's the alternative?" That's when Jasmine delivered the line that would go viral. "We go forward by telling the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. By fixing what's broken instead of defending it. And by stopping the fearmongering that gets people hurt while the powerful stay safe." With that, the studio fell quiet. Even Megyn had no response ready. The moment felt frozen in time, like everyone had collectively realized something big had just happened. Crockett hadn't yelled. She hadn't insulted. But she had absolutely flipped the narrative, and done it without breaking a sweat. The clip of that exchange would rack up millions of views within hours. But in that moment, before the views, before the trending hashtags, all anyone could do was sit in silence, and feel the shift. Crockett had fired back, and the room would never be the same. The moment was electric. For over 20 minutes, Jasmine Crockett had matched Megyn Kelly jab for jab, calmly flipping each attack into a teachable moment. But what came next wasn't just a comeback or a clapback, it was a shutdown. The kind of moment so raw, so honest, and so surgically delivered that it made the entire studio go still. Megyn, looking visibly unsettled by the way the conversation was slipping out of her control, decided to go for the kill shot. If Crockett wasn't going to fumble under pressure, maybe she'd trip over her own ideals. So Megyn leaned in, voice sharpened with sarcasm, and asked a question that was supposed to corner her. "If you're so concerned with truth and justice, why do you keep defending a party that lets criminals run free?" The way she said it was cutting. Dismissive. She emphasized the word criminals as if it were a weapon. The audience gasped audibly, not just at the question, but at the obvious trap it was meant to be. It was the kind of question built for sound bites, designed to go viral in conservative circles. But Jasmine didn't take the bait. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't blink. She simply leaned forward, planted both hands on the desk, and looked Megyn straight in the eye. Then came the line. "Ma'am," she said, slowly, like she wanted each syllable to land with force. "The only criminals I see running free are the ones protected by billionaires, media platforms, and people like you who sell fear for profit." Silence. No follow-up question. No interruption. Nothing. Just silence. It was like someone hit pause on the broadcast. Even the camera operators, usually expressionless behind their equipment, were stunned. You could see one of them shake his head slightly, as if to say, "Did she really just say that?" But she wasn't done. Jasmine leaned in a little closer and added, "Don't talk to me about justice when you won't even say the words Black Lives Matter out loud, without a but or a condition attached to it." Megyn froze. Her trademark composure, the smooth delivery she'd perfected over decades, cracked, just for a second. But it was enough. She couldn't answer. She couldn't recover. She was stuck, cornered not by volume or outrage, but by truth, and the entire audience saw it happen in real time. That pause, that brutal, beautiful pause, was louder than any shouting match. The moderator, clearly rattled, tried to jump in with a scripted line. "All right, let's remember to keep the discussion respectful." But Jasmine turned slightly toward the moderator and cut through the noise again. "I've been respectful this whole time. You don't have to yell to shake a system." And that's when the audience reacted, not with claps or cheers, but with something rarer, a collective realization. People in the crowd looked around at each other, nodding. Some had their mouths open. Others were already typing furiously on their phones. Clips of that moment began uploading before the segment even ended. No theatrics. No screaming. Just clarity. Power. A woman speaking truth in a place that usually avoids it. What shook people most wasn't what Jasmine said, it was how she said it. She didn't beg for agreement. She didn't try to please both sides. She simply told the truth as she saw it. And in that studio, under those lights, against that host, truth became the most powerful thing in the room. Megyn, still recovering, tried to respond with a line that fell flat. "Well, I think we can all agree crime is a serious issue." Too late. No one was listening to that pivot. Crockett had just exposed a deeper problem. Not just in media. Not just in politics. But in how debates like this are used to distract from the truth rather than confront it. She showed what happens when someone walks into a room designed to silence them, and speaks anyway. Later, analysts would call that moment the turning point. Clips flooded Twitter and Instagram with captions like, "She ended Megyn with this one sentence. Mic drop moment." Studio froze. You could hear history being made. One political commentator tweeted, "Jasmine Crockett just gave the media a masterclass in speaking truth without shouting." Even those who didn't fully agree with her message had to respect the delivery. The calm confidence. The refusal to be shaken. In the post-show breakdown, Megyn seemed distant. She didn't mention the moment directly. Instead, she vaguely commented on how some guests come with rehearsed lines. But anyone who saw the exchange knew that wasn't rehearsed. That was lived experience. That was conviction. Jasmine Crockett walked out of that studio not just as a politician, but as a force. Her words had stopped a season anchor cold. Her truth had changed the tone of the room. And that line, "Don't talk to me about justice," would live on in viral videos, reaction reels, and social feeds for weeks to come. And the silence that followed? That was the sound of a system being shook, one sentence at a time. The second the studio lights dimmed and the segment ended, the real explosion began. Cameras cut, staff unplugged microphones, and guests moved toward the backstage exit, but no one was really paying attention to the routine wrap-up. All eyes were on Jasmine Crockett, who had just delivered one of the most unforgettable moments in live political television. Producers exchanged glances. Crew members whispered under their breath. Even some of Megyn Kelly's own team looked shaken, as if they had just witnessed something historic, and they had. But it didn't stay in the studio. It couldn't. The clip, ***, "Don't talk to me about justice when you won't even say Black Lives Matter," ***, was already being clipped and uploaded by audience members before the credits even rolled. Twitter and TikTok lit up like wildfire. Instagram Reels popped up within minutes, captioned with phrases like, "This is how you handle media gaslighting." Jasmine Crockett ended a career in 60 seconds. Silence. Mic drop. Legendary. By the time Jasmine had left the studio building, the moment had already gone viral. Inside her black SUV, she pulled out her phone and saw it, over 2,000 mentions in under an hour. TikTok influencers had already cut reaction videos. YouTube creators were uploading breakdowns of the debate. And her quote, now turned into a meme, was making its rounds on every political page on the internet. The hashtags #Crockett vs. Kelly, #TruthTeller, and #StudioSilence were trending on X, formerly Twitter, by midnight. And the most liked comment of the night? She didn't just clap back, she educated the nation. The reaction wasn't limited to social media. Political commentators, both left and right, couldn't ignore what had happened. Liberal outlets praised her for her poise, calling her a voice of the new generation. Even some conservative pundits, known for defending Megyn Kelly, acknowledged that Jasmine had controlled the conversation with confidence and clarity rarely seen in live TV debates. In fact, it sparked a larger conversation about the way media frames political figures, especially women of color. Overnight, Crockett's words were being replayed on podcasts, late-night commentary shows, and even by high school and college debate teams analyzing her tone and delivery. Young voters in particular were inspired. Gen Z creators on TikTok began stitching her video, echoing her words and breaking down the debate line by line. Many posted, "I didn't even know who Jasmine Crockett was before this, but now I want her in every debate." Some compared her to AOC. Others said she was like Angela Davis with congressional credentials. Meanwhile, Megyn Kelly's response was silence. She posted nothing that night. No tweet. No comment. No reaction video. It wasn't until 48 hours later that she made a vague statement on X. Debate is healthy. Sometimes things get heated. I always welcome passion. But the damage was done. Her audience wasn't satisfied. Some die-hard supporters tried to defend her, calling the moment a gotcha attack. But the clip didn't lie. Megyn hadn't been ambushed. She asked the question. Crockett just gave an answer that hit harder than expected. Some journalists even asked whether Kelly had lost control of her show's format altogether. It was clear she underestimated Crockett. She thought she'd be interviewing a loud voice from the left with predictable talking points. Instead, she got a masterclass in truth-telling and political grace under fire. Meanwhile, Jasmine's team seized the moment brilliantly. Within hours, they had already posted the full clip with proper captions and clean formatting on her official accounts. The reel exploded. Celebrities and fellow politicians reshared it, adding words like brave, commanding, and flawless. Even some grassroots organizations reached out to collaborate. Activist groups asked her to speak at upcoming summits. Panels, forums, and podcasts began requesting her for guest appearances. She went from trending topic to national voice almost overnight. But Crockett didn't change. In an interview with a progressive podcast the next day, she addressed the viral moment with the same composure that won her the internet. I wasn't trying to go viral, she said. I was just tired of sitting across people who profit off misinformation. I'm not going to sugarcoat injustice. That's not why I ran for office. That line alone sparked another wave of admiration. What stood out most was that Crockett hadn't raised her voice once during the interview. She didn't rely on volume or insults. She dismantled an entire media persona with facts and integrity. People started calling it the silent thunder moment. Loud without yelling. Bold without drama. Even late-night hosts jumped on it. One comedian quipped. Megyn Kelly finally found a guest who wasn't afraid of her questions. I haven't seen someone fold that fast since I forgot to bring an umbrella in a thunderstorm. And behind it all was Jasmine Crockett, calm, sharp, grounded. She didn't ask to be a viral icon. She just showed up, told the truth, and let the world decide what to do with it. The next time she appeared on live television, the host introduced her not as a vocal Democrat, but as one of the most fearless voices in Congress today. That was the power of one sentence. One confrontation. One unshakable woman. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't back down. She didn't play it safe. Jasmine Crockett walked into that studio with facts, and walked out with the entire internet behind her. This wasn't just a debate. This was a message. Loud, clear, and unforgettable. If you felt that shift. If that silence hit harder than any headline. Subscribe to Union Show, where the truth never folds. We don't do noise. We do impact.